The smartest criminals often make one fatal mistake. They underestimate the animals around them. This is a collection of 33 incredible true stories where creatures great and small became the most unlikely detectives. From loyal family pets to wild creatures in the forest, these animals shattered complex criminal schemes and brought justice to light. You are about to hear tales so bizarre they will permanently change how you view the animal kingdom. What hidden intelligence do you think we overlook in the creatures we live alongside every single day? A pet parrot's new vocabulary sent chills through an entire household. The bird had always been cheerful, mimicking everyday sounds and simple greetings. But after its owner was found dead under circumstances initially ruled an accident, the parrot began to cry out a desperate, haunting phrase. "Do not shoot," it would squawk over and over again. The family was horrified, hearing what they believed were the victim's final, terrified words echoed back by their feathered companion. They contacted the police, insisting the death was no accident. Investigators, though skeptical at first, could not ignore the bird's persistent and specific cries. The case was reopened as a potential homicide. That parrot's unexpected testimony shifted the entire investigation, forcing detectives to look for evidence of a struggle they had previously missed. The emotional toll on the family was immense, living with a constant, audible reminder of their loved one's final moments. The break came when a suspect, under the pressure of this bizarre new evidence, finally confessed. He had not counted on a witness who could not be silenced. This feathery detective, perched in its cage, had delivered a testimony no human could ever give. It makes you wonder what other secrets the animals in our homes might be keeping. While the parrot revealed a crime hidden within a home, some mysteries are buried deep in the wilderness, far from any human witness. A German shepherd named Cody was a highly trained cadaver dog, a specialist in locating the scent of human decomposition. His handler had brought him to a massive state forest, following a faint, years-old lead in a missing person case that had long grown cold. Search teams had combed the area before with no success, and the general consensus was that if the victim was there, the dense undergrowth and animal activity would have scattered any remains beyond recognition. But Cody worked with a different kind of focus. While human searchers are guided by logic and sight, the dog was driven by an incredible sense of smell, capable of detecting a scent trail that was years old and buried beneath layers of forest debris. He moved with a determined persistence, pulling his handler off the main paths and into a thicket that had been overlooked. There, he began to scratch and whine at a seemingly unremarkable patch of earth, refusing to move. His unwavering alert was so intense that the team decided to excavate the spot. Buried just beneath the surface, they discovered human remains. This was the breakthrough the investigation desperately needed. Advanced forensic techniques, including DNA analysis, were used to confirm the identity of the victim, finally providing answers to a family that had lived with uncertainty for years. Cody's success was not a matter of luck. It was the result of rigorous training and a natural ability that no human team could replicate. His story is a powerful lesson in persistence, showing that sometimes the key to solving a cold case is not a new clue but a fresh nose, one that never gives up on a scent. It leaves you to ponder how many other answers are waiting in the wild, just one determined animal away from being found. Sometimes the most significant clues arrive not with a bang, but with a soft thud on the doormat. A family was initially amused by their cat's peculiar new hobby of bringing home what appeared to be discarded trinkets. A shiny bracelet one day, an ornate earring the next. They assumed the feline was simply scavenging from a neighbor's trash. But the trinkets soon escalated into items of undeniable value: a diamond-studded pendant, a man's gold ring. Amusement curdled into deep suspicion. How could their pet be finding such expensive objects? Determined to solve the mystery, the owners fastened a small, lightweight camera to the cat's collar. The footage revealed a journey far more deliberate than anyone had imagined. The cat did not wander aimlessly. It moved with clear purpose, slipping through a broken vent in the foundation of a nearby shed. Inside that dark, hidden space, the camera showed a stunning sight: a hoard of glittering jewelry, watches, and electronics, all neatly stashed away. This was no random collection of lost items. It was a hidden treasure trove. The family immediately took the video to the police, who recognized the loot from a string of unsolved local burglaries. They staked out the shed and soon apprehended a prolific thief who had been using the secluded space as his personal vault, believing it was the perfect hiding spot. He never considered that a curious cat would treat his stolen goods like a personal toy box. This story demonstrates that major criminal operations can be undone by the simplest of animal instincts: a cat's desire to bring a shiny prize home to its family. It makes you look at your own pet's little quirks in a whole new light, doesn't it? A horse named Spirit lived up to his name in the most heartbreaking way. On a quiet ranch, he was known for his gentle nature, but that gentleness shattered whenever one particular ranch hand, a man named Carl, came near. Spirit would not simply shy away, he would erupt. His eyes would roll back to show the whites, he would pin his ears flat against his head, and he would kick violently at the walls of his stall if Carl even entered the barn. The horse's owner, a woman deeply attuned to her animal's moods, knew this was more than simple dislike. This was a raw, visceral terror, a reaction she had never seen in any horse before. It was the silent, desperate testimony of an animal that could not speak, but was screaming with its entire body. Trusting that bond, she confronted Carl, who dismissed the behavior as the horse being naturally difficult and untrainable. Unsatisfied, the owner made a decision that would change everything. She called in a veterinarian for a full examination. The vet found the evidence the horse could not verbalize. Old, healed-over welts on his flank, subtle signs of past lameness in a leg, and scars consistent with being struck by a hard object. This was not a single incident, but a pattern of deliberate abuse. The owner took her findings and Spirit's dramatic behavioral evidence to the authorities. Investigators did not stop at one ranch hand. They began looking into Carl's background and discovered he was a key player in a larger, shadowy network involved in the illegal trade of horses, a cruel business where animals were acquired under false pretenses and often brutally broken to be sold quickly. Spirit's powerful reaction was the first thread that, when pulled, unraveled the entire operation. His visible fear and the physical proof on his body led to multiple arrests, shutting down a ring that had operated for years under the radar. This case stands as a profound reminder that justice for the voiceless often begins with someone willing to listen, to look past easy explanations and see the truth in a frightened animal's eyes. It makes you consider how many other silent pleas for help we might be missing, simply because we are not paying close enough attention. The silent world beneath the waves holds secrets no human eye can see, but a dolphin's sonar can paint a perfect picture. In a classified military program, a pod of bottlenose dolphins was conducting a routine training exercise off the coast, honing their skills in underwater detection. These were no ordinary dolphins. They were highly trained specialists for the United States Navy. Their biological sonar so advanced it could distinguish between a rock and a manufactured mine with stunning accuracy. During one such drill, their behavior shifted dramatically. Instead of following the planned course, they began circling a single civilian pleasure craft with intense, focused interest, emitting a specific sequence of clicks and whistles that their handlers immediately recognized. This was not their protocol for a practice object. This was their trained signal for a genuine, suspicious find. The dolphins were unequivocally stating that the boat's hull contained something it should not. Trusting their animal partners implicitly, the naval team alerted the Coast Guard. What followed was a tense, high-speed chase across the open water as the civilian vessel attempted to flee. The authorities eventually forced it to stop, and a subsequent inspection revealed a hidden compartment, expertly welded into the hull. Inside was not weapons or explosives, but a massive cache of illegal narcotics, a smuggling operation running right through the middle of a military exercise. This case shattered the conventional boundaries of law enforcement, demonstrating how the unparalleled sensory abilities of a military animal could be seamlessly co-opted to intercept a civilian criminal enterprise. The smugglers had planned for everything except for the curiosity of a few dolphins who knew their job a little too well. It makes you realize that the most sophisticated security system in the world might just be a pair of intelligent, aquatic eyes patrolling the deep. A poisoned landscape often whispers its secrets, but a dead bee colony screams them. This is the story of how a sudden, silent spring in a local apiary unraveled a corporate crime. A beekeeper arrived one morning to find his hives catastrophically empty, thousands of his bees lying dead around their homes. It was an ecological massacre on a miniature scale, and he knew instantly this was no natural disease. Desperate for answers, he called in a team of environmental scientists who collected the dead insects and samples of the honey for a forensic analysis far beyond a simple autopsy. The results were chilling. The bees and their honey were saturated with a potent, illegal pesticide, a chemical so toxic it had been banned for agricultural use years prior. This was not a case of accidental drift from a nearby farm. This was a deliberate and concentrated poison. The investigation shifted from a simple environmental mishap to a criminal manhunt. Scientists mapped the chemical signature of the toxin and, using the foraging patterns of the bees as a guide, began testing soil and water in the surrounding area. They were led to a remote, seemingly abandoned field where the ground itself was contaminated. Further excavation revealed not just soil pollution, but dozens of rusting barrels, illegally dumped and leaking their lethal contents directly into the water table. The corporation responsible had been secretly disposing of its chemical waste to avoid the high cost of proper disposal, creating a toxic time bomb, but the story grew even darker. The investigation into the dumping site uncovered a forgotten wrongful death case, a local farmer who had died from a mysterious illness years before. His land bordered the poisoned field. With this new evidence, his case was reopened and medical records were re-examined, revealing that his illness was consistent with prolonged exposure to the very same pesticide found in the bees. The silent testimony of 1 million dead insects became the catalyst for justice, leading to massive criminal charges for environmental crimes, negligence, and ultimately corporate manslaughter. This case cemented the role of insects as our most vulnerable environmental sentinels, tiny guardians whose sudden silence can speak volumes about the crimes happening right under our noses. It forces a sobering question: if we are not listening to the bees, what other warnings are we missing? Even the most docile pets can uncover secrets buried just beneath the surface of our everyday lives. A woman was tending her garden while her pet rabbit hopped freely in the backyard, a daily ritual of peaceful coexistence. The rabbit, driven by its innate instinct to dig and burrow, began working at a patch of soft earth near the fence line. This was not unusual behavior, but the persistence was. The animal dug deeper and with more focus than ever before, its paws scrabbling against something solid. Curious, the woman went to investigate, expecting to find a tree root or a large stone. Instead, her fingers brushed against the corner of a metal box, deliberately buried and hidden. With a growing sense of unease, she pried it loose from the soil and opened the lid. Inside was a shocking discovery: bundles of cash wrapped in plastic, and beneath them a stack of official-looking documents. Her initial confusion turned to disbelief as she read them. They were falsified insurance claims, accident reports, and medical bills, all bearing the name of her neighbor. The paper trail was meticulously detailed, outlining a long-running embezzlement scheme that had siphoned thousands of dollars from a corporate insurer. This was not a random find, it was a buried treasure of criminal evidence. She immediately contacted the police, who quickly verified the documents were authentic and directly linked to a series of open fraud investigations. The neighbor, who had presented himself as a respectable family man, was arrested within days. The rabbit's simple, natural act of digging had exposed a complex web of lies, providing investigators with the physical proof they needed to secure multiple convictions. It is a powerful testament that criminal schemes, no matter how carefully planned, are vulnerable to the unpredictable curiosity of the animal world. What other truths might be lying just a few inches down, waiting for a pair of paws to bring them into the light? A biologist's quiet study of deer migration became the key to unlocking a human tragedy. She had placed a network of motion-activated cameras throughout a secluded stretch of woodland, her only goal to document the movements of the local wildlife. For months, the cameras dutifully recorded grazing deer, curious raccoons, and the occasional fox. Then, one night, a different kind of motion triggered the sensor. The resulting footage was not of an animal, but of a vehicle, its headlights off, creeping slowly down a fire road in the dead of night. A figure emerged, struggled with a heavy, wrapped bundle from the trunk, and dragged it into the undergrowth. The timestamp was precise, and the camera's built-in GPS stamped the location with exact coordinates. This was no longer a wildlife survey, it was a direct recording of a crime. The biologist, reviewing the footage days later, immediately contacted the police. Investigators realized the footage was a perfect match for a cold case, the disappearance of a local man whose case had stalled for lack of evidence or a body. The timestamp from the camera placed the incident on the very night the victim was last seen. The location data led police directly to a shallow, unmarked grave they had previously missed. This was not just a clue, it was a complete narrative of the crime, captured by a device that never sleeps and never blinks. The clarity of the video allowed for the identification of the vehicle's make and model, and enhanced imaging provided a clear shot of the license plate. This digital witness provided the probable cause needed for search warrants, which uncovered further forensic evidence linking the suspect to the victim. The arrest was swift, built entirely upon the foundation of that one accidental recording. This case highlights a new era of forensic science where justice can come from the most unexpected and automated of sources. It was not a trained detective or a loyal pet that broke this case open, but a simple piece of technology left alone in the woods, doing its job with perfect, unbiased accuracy. The killer had chosen the perfect remote location, far from prying human eyes, but he failed to account for the silent, unblinking eye of science. How many other secrets are being recorded right now by the devices we place in nature, quietly waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth? A digital canary began to chirp a silent alarm in the dead of night. This was not a bird in a cage, but a sophisticated software trap set by a cybersecurity firm. A system intentionally designed to look like a vulnerable part of a corporate network, brimming with fake but enticing data. Its entire purpose was to be found by hackers to sing out the moment it was touched. When it did, the security team knew instantly they had a live one. The intruder was not some random script kiddie, but a professional, moving with a precision that suggested they were hunting for something very specific. The security team followed the digital breadcrumbs left by the canary's triggered alerts, tracing the attack back to its source. They discovered a sprawling, months-long campaign of corporate espionage, a silent theft of intellectual property that was already costing the client company millions. The real-world consequences became starkly clear when the investigators, armed with the digital evidence from their honeypot, identified the perpetrators. It was not a lone hacker, but a team operating from a shell company halfway across the globe, funded by a rival corporation. The arrests that followed were a landmark case, proving that the classic concept of a sentinel could be translated into the ones and zeros of the modern age. This digital canary did not die to warn of poison gas. It thrived by being attacked, its very existence a lure that exposed a far greater crime. It forces us to reconsider what it means to be a guardian in an invisible world, where the most effective watchmen are not living creatures but clever lines of code waiting to be disturbed. A bloodhound's nose holds a map of the world written in scent. On a cold, damp evening, that incredible ability became one family's only hope when a young child vanished from a backyard. Search teams with flashlights and loudspeakers combed the area for hours, but the woods were thick and the night was falling fast. Desperation mounted with every passing minute. That is when a specialized search and rescue team arrived with a bloodhound named Justice. This was no ordinary dog. His breed possesses up to 300 million scent receptors, a sense of smell so powerful it can isolate a single human scent from a chaotic mix of odors days after the person has passed through. Justice was given a scent article, a small piece of the child's clothing, and with a deep, purposeful sniff, he locked onto the trail. He led his handler on a relentless march, his nose constantly to the ground, pulling through brambles across a shallow creek and up a steep, muddy incline. The handler trusted the dog completely, following without question through terrain that seemed to lead nowhere. For several miles, Justice never hesitated, his entire being focused on that one fragile scent cone. He led them directly to a remote, dilapidated cabin that had been missed by the initial search parties. Outside the door, Justice sat and let out a low, certain whine, his trained final alert. The police, following close behind, moved in immediately. Inside, they found the child, frightened but unharmed, and arrested the abductor who had been hiding there. The emotional reunion under the porch light was a moment of pure, unadulterated relief, a life brought home by a wet nose and unwavering determination. This was not a lucky guess. It was the result of intense, specialized training that bonds a dog and handler into a single, life-saving unit. Justice's story stands as a timeless reminder that some of our greatest heroes walk on four legs, and that the most powerful technology in a search party is still a loyal heart and a phenomenal nose. It makes you wonder how many other lost souls are waiting, just one determined sniff away from being found. Another parrot proved its memory was more than just mimicry in the wake of a brazen home robbery. The owners returned to find their house ransacked, precious jewelry and electronics gone. In the midst of the chaos and the police investigation, their pet parrot, usually cheerful, began a new and relentless refrain. Mario, it would squawk over and over again. The family initially dismissed it as random chatter, perhaps a name the bird had picked up from a television show. But the parrot was insistent, repeating the name with a clarity that became impossible to ignore. It was this persistence that finally clicked for the owners. They realized the only people in the house before the robbery, besides family, were the movers hired to bring in a new sofa. One of the young men on that crew had been called Mario by his partner. The police, though skeptical of a parrot's testimony, had few other leads. They decided to focus their investigation on the moving company's employees, specifically anyone named Mario. This simple filter quickly narrowed the suspect pool to one individual. When questioned, this Mario cracked almost immediately, startled that a bird had somehow given him away. He confessed to the crime and led police to a pawn shop where he had already sold some of the stolen goods. The parrot had not witnessed the crime itself, but it had been listening intently during the move, absorbing the sounds and names in its environment. Its perfect recall provided the single, crucial clue that human witnesses had missed. This story underscores a profound truth about the animals that share our homes. They are not just background noise, they are constant observers, recording the world in their own unique way. It makes you wonder what other details are stored in the minds of our pets, just waiting for the right moment to be spoken. A dog's instincts for finding what is lost do not fade with age. Max was a retired rescue dog, a Labrador mix who had spent his prime years working with a search and rescue team. Now enjoying a quieter life, his daily walks were usually a peaceful routine. But one afternoon, his calm demeanor shattered. As they passed a weedy, forgotten lot, Max froze. His body went rigid, his nose twitching as he pulled his owner toward a specific patch of disturbed earth. Then he began to dig. This was not the playful digging of a bored pet. It was a focused, frantic excavation, his paws tearing at the soil with a veteran's intensity. His owner, recognizing the behavior from Max's years of training, knew this was an alert. He called the authorities immediately. The police, initially skeptical of a retired dog's obsession with a vacant lot, were persuaded by the owner's insistence. They carefully excavated the spot Max had marked. Buried just a foot down, they found a handgun wrapped in a plastic bag that was beginning to decay. The weapon was rusted and caked with dirt, but it was intact. It was sent to the forensics lab for analysis. Ballistics testing provided the first major break, matching the gun to a series of violent street robberies and assaults that had terrorized the neighborhood over a year prior. Each case had gone cold, with no suspect ever identified, but the gun held a second, more damning piece of evidence. Technicians, using advanced chemical techniques, managed to lift a partial DNA profile from the grip and trigger. That profile was run through criminal databases, and it produced a direct hit, identifying a man already in custody on an unrelated charge. Confronted with the physical evidence linking him to the weapon used in multiple crimes, the suspect saw the futility of denial and confessed. Max's persistent digging had not just solved one crime, it had closed the books on a string of violent acts, finally providing answers and a sense of security to an entire community. His story is a powerful testament that a working dog's purpose does not end with retirement. It simply waits for the right moment to be called upon once more. That bond of trust between a handler and their dog, whether active or retired, can unearth the evidence that human investigation alone could never find. A farmer's daily life is built on routine and a deep familiarity with his animals. He knew the rhythms of his cattle, their predictable grazing patterns, and the placid sounds of their lowing. So when a small herd began to act strangely, bunching up and refusing to graze near a particular section of fence line, his attention was immediately drawn. This was not a one-time occurrence, it became a consistent pattern, a pocket of palpable unease in his otherwise peaceful field. The cattle would approach the spot, then stop short, their ears flicking nervously before they turned and moved away as a group. Trusting this silent testimony from his livestock, the farmer decided to investigate the area himself. He walked the fence line with a new purpose, his eyes scanning the ground where the animals would not tread. It was there, nearly obscured by overgrown grass, that he found the first clue, a set of faint, curved skid marks cutting across the gravel shoulder of the adjacent road. Pushing further into the weeds, his hand closed around a small, broken piece of black plastic, a fragment of a vehicle's grille or headlight casing. The farmer felt a cold dread, realizing his field might hold a darker story. He contacted the authorities, reporting not just the physical evidence, but the persistent, unsettling behavior of his cattle that had led him to it. The police, who had a cold case file for a fatal hit and run from months prior with no leads, took the farmer's report seriously. Accident reconstruction experts were brought to the scene. They used the skid marks to calculate the vehicle's speed and angle of impact, determining it had veered off the road, struck the fence post, and then fled. The fragment of plastic was the real breakthrough, a critical piece of forensic evidence. It was a specific make and model of headlight lens used on only a few types of trucks from a certain production year. This narrow identification allowed investigators to compile a list of every locally registered vehicle that matched the description. They began a methodical canvass looking for a truck with recent front-end damage. The break came when they found one at a local body shop, its owner attempting to get it repaired with a cash-only, no questions asked payment. Confronted with the vehicle part that perfectly matched the broken piece from the scene, the driver confessed. He had been driving home late that night, nodded off for a second, and panicked after the crash, choosing to run rather than face the consequences. For months, he believed he had gotten away with it, never imagining that a herd of quiet cattle would bear witness to his crime and guide a farmer to the truth he had tried to bury. This case stands as a profound example of how the animal world perceives disturbances we often miss. The cattle had sensed the lingering energy of that violent event, the scent of oil and fear, or the subtle change in the landscape that made them instinctively wary. Their consistent collective behavior was a silent alarm, a testament to the fact that sometimes the most crucial witnesses cannot speak our language, but they communicate the truth all the same. How many other crimes are quietly observed by the creatures living alongside us, their testimony waiting for someone who knows how to listen? A home's quiet atmosphere was pierced by an unexpected witness. After a woman was found dead at the foot of a staircase, the initial assumption was a tragic fall. But in the days that followed, the family's pet myna bird began to vocalize a disturbing new script. These birds are renowned for their ability to mimic human speech with uncanny clarity, and this one was no exception. It replayed a heated argument, its voice a perfect echo of its owner's, culminating in a desperate, sobbing phrase, "I did not mean to push her." The family was horrified. What they had initially written off as a terrible accident now appeared to be something far more sinister. They reported the bird's chilling recitation to the police, who were suddenly faced with a dilemma no law enforcement manual could adequately address. How do you handle a witness that cannot be cross-examined, one that offers its testimony on a repeating, unpredictable loop? The legal challenges were immense. An animal's mimicry is not considered testimony in any court of law. It is considered hearsay upon hearsay, a recording without a verifiable source. The prosecution could never build a case on the myna bird's words alone. Yet, those words created an undeniable psychological pressure cooker. The husband who had reported the fall was now living in a house where the walls seemed to speak his alleged crime back to him. Investigators used the bird's specific phrase as a guide, re-examining the scene for evidence of a struggle that fit this new narrative. They found what they had initially missed, a subtly disturbed rug, a smudge on the wall at pushing height. Confronted with this new physical evidence and the constant, audible reminder of his own voice confessing, the man's composure shattered. He confessed during an interrogation, admitting the argument had escalated and he had shoved his wife in a moment of blinding rage. The myna bird had not been a legal witness, but it became the moral one, its perfect memory and mimicry creating the unique circumstances that led directly to the truth. This case forces a difficult question. If an animal bears witness to a crime with perfect accuracy, does our justice system have a way to truly listen? The streets were packed with a bustling crowd, a typical scene for a downtown festival. Amid the cheerful chaos, a mounted police officer guided his partner, a seasoned horse named Titan, through the throng of people. Titan was a veteran of crowd control, trained to remain calm amidst noise and movement, but his behavior suddenly shifted from professional calm to profound unease. He stopped dead in his tracks, refusing to move forward despite his rider's gentle commands. His ears swiveled forward, his nostrils flared wide, and a low, anxious snort escaped him as he focused intently on a single, overflowing public trash can. The officer, attuned to his partner's signals, knew this was no ordinary moment of stubbornness. This was a specific, targeted alert. Titan had been trained for this very scenario, his immense height and superior senses giving him a unique vantage point. A horse's sense of smell is vastly more acute than a human's, capable of detecting subtle chemical signatures that our noses would never notice. Titan was likely catching the faint, telltale odor of explosive compounds leaching from a package within the bin, an aroma completely lost in the mix of food waste and city smells to every human present. Trusting his partner's instincts without question, the officer immediately called in a suspicious package and began calmly clearing the immediate area. The bomb squad's response was swift and methodical. Using a remote-controlled robot, they carefully extracted a homemade device from the trash can, a volatile mix of chemicals and shrapnel designed for maximum carnage. The device was safely detonated in a controlled explosion, the thunderous blast echoing through the now evacuated streets. That single, stubborn refusal from a 1,000-pound animal averted a potential massacre, saving countless lives that day. This case redefined the role of horses like Titan in modern security forces, proving they are not just symbolic figures for crowd management, but living, breathing detection systems with an innate ability to perceive threats long before any machine or human can. It forces us to acknowledge a humbling truth that our most advanced technology can sometimes be surpassed by the ancient, refined senses of an animal partner. What other dangers pass us by simply because we lack the senses to perceive them? A fire investigator's home is a place of careful observation, a skill that extends far beyond the job. His cat, a usually bold and curious tabby, had always displayed one inexplicable quirk, a deep, trembling fear of the man who lived next door. The cat would not just hide, it would flatten itself to the floor, its eyes wide with panic, whenever that particular neighbor was in his yard or even visible through a window. This was not a general shyness, it was a targeted terror the investigator could not explain. Then, one night, the neighbor's house went up in flames. The initial assessment pointed to faulty wiring, a tragic accident. But back at home, the investigator watched his cat's reaction to the commotion. While fire trucks and shouting filled the street, the animal was not cowering from the chaos. It was staring, fixated and tense, at the neighbor himself, who was standing across the street watching his house burn. That specific, focused fear in the cat's posture struck the investigator as profoundly wrong. It was the catalyst that made him question the official story. He used his professional authority to request a second, more thorough look at the fire scene. This time, his team searched for different clues, ignoring the assumed electrical fault and hunting for signs of an accelerant, a substance used to spread a fire quickly and intensely. They deployed a portable hydrocarbon sniffer, a device that can detect the invisible vapor traces of fuels like gasoline or kerosene that survive even a fierce fire. The device chirped its alert near the home's foundation. Lab analysis of soil and debris samples from that location confirmed it, identifying the chemical signature of a specific brand of charcoal lighter fluid. The burn patterns told the rest of the story, revealing a clear paw trail that originated outside the house, not from within where any electrical fire would have started. Confronted with this irrefutable forensic evidence, the neighbor confessed. He had been drowning in debt and saw insurance fraud as his only way out. He never considered that his presence alone had terrified a cat, and that the cat's silent testimony would be the very thing that guided a trained investigator to the truth. This story blurs the line between professional intuition and animal instinct, proving that sometimes the most critical clue is not a piece of evidence but a feeling, one that is mirrored in the fearful eyes of a pet. Their peaceful sleep was shattered by a sound like a dozen rusty car horns blaring at once. A flock of domestic geese, usually quiet through the night, had erupted into a frantic, deafening chorus in the backyard. The owners, jolted awake, knew this was no ordinary midnight disturbance. Geese are naturally vigilant guardians, possessing a powerful instinct to announce any intrusion with their raucous, unmistakable honks. Peering out the window, the husband saw a shadowy figure hunched over the family car in the driveway, its door open and interior light glowing. The geese had not just been making noise, they had been sounding a specific, targeted alarm. The police were called while the owners watched from inside, the would-be thief completely unaware he had been betrayed by the feathered security system he had ignored. Officers arrived within minutes, surrounding the property and taking the suspect into custody as he was still trying to hotwire the vehicle. The investigation that followed revealed this was no random crime. The man was a known offender, responsible for a string of similar thefts in the area where he targeted homes with long driveways and little visible security. He had carefully cased each property, but he had made one critical miscalculation. He saw the geese as simple farm animals, a quaint background feature, not as a highly effective motion-activated alarm that required no batteries and never slept. Their incredible noise, a product of their social nature and protective instincts, had provided a faster and more effective alert than any electronic system could have. This case redefines the very idea of a guard animal, moving it far beyond dogs and into the realm of traditional farmyard creatures. It proves that true security does not always come from the most advanced technology, but sometimes from the oldest, most reliable instincts in the animal kingdom. How many other unexpected guardians are living in our backyards, just waiting for the chance to sound the alarm? The science of scent is a language dogs have mastered for millennia. In a case that would test the very limits of forensic evidence, a victim of a brutal assault provided investigators with a witness that could not speak, her own terrified dog. The animal had been present during the attack, and while it had not been harmed, it had absorbed the assailant's unique scent signature, a complex chemical profile as individual as a fingerprint. With no other physical evidence and a traumatized victim unable to identify her attacker, the police decided on a radical approach. They would ask the dog to pick the suspect from a lineup. This was not a traditional visual identification, but a scent lineup, a carefully controlled procedure where the dog is presented with a series of sterile metal pipes, each containing a cloth pad rubbed on a different person. One pipe holds the scent collected from the crime scene, while the others hold scents from volunteers who are not suspects. The dog, a mixed breed named Lady, had been specially trained for scent work, taught to sit and stare intently at the source of a matching odor. Her entire world was built around this one powerful sense. When presented with the lineup, she did not hesitate. She moved down the row of pipes, sniffing each one methodically until she reached the one containing the crime scene scent. She immediately sat, her gaze locked on the pipe, her body rigid with certainty. She had just identified the assailant's scent, but the procedure did not stop there. To confirm the match, the investigators then introduced a new set of pipes, this one containing scent pads from several potential suspects, including the man police strongly believed was responsible. Lady again performed her duty, moving from pipe to pipe until she reached one specific sample. She sat again, giving the same unwavering alert. The scent from the crime scene pipe and the scent from the suspect pipe were, in her mind, a perfect match. This canine identification provided the crucial probable cause detectives needed to obtain a warrant for a formal DNA test. That scientific test later confirmed what Lady's nose already knew, resulting in an arrest and an eventual conviction. The legal battle that followed was groundbreaking as defense attorneys challenged the admissibility of a dog's testimony. The court ultimately ruled that while the dog's alert alone could not convict, it was a reliable and valid forensic tool that could establish the necessary probable cause to move an investigation forward, much like a tip from a confidential informant. This case set a vital precedent, cementing the role of trained canines as living, breathing forensic instruments. It forces us to confront a profound reality that in the silent world of scent, a dog's perception can be as accurate as any lab machine, delivering a form of justice that operates on a plane beyond human senses. The chaos of an escaped pet is a universal nightmare, but the residents of one apartment building faced a uniquely terrifying version. A man's beloved pet python had slipped from its enclosure, vanishing without a trace into the labyrinth of the building's interior. Panic set in as notes were slipped under doors and hallways were cautiously checked. Days passed with no sign of the serpent until a maintenance crew, responding to complaints of a strange gurgling sound in the ventilation system, made a stomach-churning discovery. There, coiled within the dusty metal ducts, was the missing python, looking distinctly unwell. As they carefully extracted the lethargic creature, it did what snakes often do when stressed or ill. It regurgitated its last meal. But this was no ordinary rodent. Onto the floor plopped several small, tightly sealed plastic bags, their contents a crystalline powder. The shock of the maintenance crew instantly morphed into alarm, and they immediately called the police. The unique packaging was the critical clue. Each bag was stamped with a tiny, distinct logo, a symbol detectives recognized from undercover drug operations as the signature of a specific high-level supplier. This was not street-level product, it was a professional operation. The python had quite literally led them to the evidence. Officers traced the ventilation shaft upward, floor by floor, to a seemingly ordinary apartment several stories above. A warranted search revealed a fully operational narcotics lab, with more of the stamped bags ready for distribution. The terrified tenant confessed almost immediately, stunned that his entire operation had been compromised not by an informant or a surveillance detail, but by a neighbor's escaped pet that had slithered through the vents and sampled his product. This case stands as one of the most bizarre examples of an animal inadvertently triggering a police investigation, proving that the most secure criminal plans can be unraveled by the simplest of animal instincts, in this case, a snake's curiosity and a very upset stomach. It makes you wonder what other secrets are circulating through the hidden arteries of our own homes, completely invisible to us, but perhaps not to the creatures we live alongside. The wilderness can be a lonely and terrifying place when you are injured and unseen. A lone hiker miles from the nearest trail had taken a devastating fall, leaving them with a badly broken leg and no way to call for help. For 2 cold nights, they lay exposed to the elements, their hope dwindling with each passing hour. Search and rescue teams scoured the vast terrain from the air and on the ground, but the dense forest canopy and rugged landscape made the task seem nearly impossible. It was then that a volunteer on horseback noticed something strange. A single brown cow stood in a small, remote clearing, and it was behaving very oddly. While the rest of the herd grazed peacefully in the distance, this one animal remained fixed in place, its head lowered as it let out a persistent, mournful lowing. The sound was not the casual call of a cow to its calf, but a constant, focused plea that cut through the quiet woods. The rider, intrigued by this anomaly, decided to investigate. As he guided his horse closer, the cow did not spook or move away. Instead, it took a few steps to the side, and there, lying in a patch of tall grass, was the missing hiker, barely conscious but alive. The cow had been standing a silent, stubborn vigil over the injured person for an unknown amount of time. Rescuers later speculated that the animal's powerful herd instinct had kicked in, compelling it to protect a vulnerable creature it perceived as part of its group. Its deep, resonant calls were not just random noise, they were a beacon, a biological alarm that guided humans directly to the one spot they needed to be. This was not a matter of solving a crime, but of preventing a tragedy, a life saved by the simple, protective instinct of a creature we rarely think of as a guardian. It profoundly shifts the narrative, revealing that animal intervention is not always about catching a criminal, but sometimes about becoming an unexpected hero. How many other lost souls are being watched over right now by the quiet guardians of the wild, their silent vigil the only thing standing between life and a lonely end? A simple mouse can chew through more than just wires. A major corporation was thrown into chaos when a critical server bank went offline, halting financial operations across the entire company. The initial diagnosis from the IT department seemed almost comical. A mouse had somehow found its way into the climate-controlled server room and gnawed through a bundle of vital fiber optic cables. It was a plausible, if embarrassing, explanation. Technicians were dispatched to repair the damage and conduct a full systems check to prevent future intrusions. But during this routine diagnostic, one of the technicians noticed something deeply strange. The server that failed was not part of the main network cluster it was supposed to be. Its data logs showed irregular, massive data transfers that occurred late at night, transfers that bypassed all standard security protocols. This was no longer an IT issue, it was a potential crime scene. The company called in a team of digital forensic experts. These specialists do not just fix computers, they dissect them, looking for the hidden fingerprints of criminal activity. They began a process called data carving, which is like sifting through digital rubble to reconstruct deleted or hidden files. What they found was a breathtakingly sophisticated embezzlement scheme. A senior executive, someone highly trusted, had been secretly running a shadow accounting system for years. He had created a series of fake vendor companies, complete with convincing invoices and contracts. The server that the mouse disabled was his personal command center, a hidden partition he used to authorize payments to these shell companies, siphoning millions of dollars into offshore accounts. The rodent's destructive chewing had triggered a chain of events that led investigators directly to the digital vault where all the evidence was stored. For years, the executive had hidden his fraud in plain sight, manipulating reports and using his authority to avoid audits. He never anticipated that his entire operation would be unraveled not by a whistleblower or a financial regulator, but by a tiny creature looking for nesting material. This story blurs the line between the physical and digital worlds of crime, proving that even the most sophisticated white-collar schemes are vulnerable to the unpredictable chaos of the natural world. How many other secrets are hiding in our machines, just one random accident away from exposure? High above the city streets, a peregrine falcon named Vega was on a mission of her own, part of a wildlife conservation project to reintroduce the birds to urban environments. Researchers were tracking her movements with a lightweight, solar-powered GPS transmitter attached to her leg, a routine tool to study nesting behaviors. Her data stream showed a normal pattern of high-speed hunting dives and rest periods until it didn't. The digital maps began to reveal a peculiar fixation. Vega was spending an inordinate amount of time on a specific, sheer ledge near the top of a newly constructed skyscraper, a location that was completely inaccessible to humans. At first, biologists assumed she had found a perfect, sheltered spot for a nest, but something about the data nagged at one researcher, the sheer frequency of her visits and the long, stationary hours she spent there. Out of a mixture of scientific curiosity and a faint, improbable hunch, he decided to share the falcon's coordinates with a contact in the police department, a detective he knew was working a frustrating, high-profile case. That case was the brazen theft of several priceless paintings from a world-renowned museum, a heist executed with such precision that it had left no viable clues. The thieves had bypassed a multi-million-dollar security system, leaving behind only empty frames and a lot of questions. The detective, with no other leads to pursue, decided to humor the researcher. He arranged for a window washing rig to be positioned for a closer look at Vega's chosen ledge. As the platform swung near the spot, the crew saw it. Tucked into a deep, narrow crevice in the building's granite facade, protected from the elements, was a long, cylindrical tube made of waterproof plastic. Using extended grabbers, they carefully retrieved the container. Inside, wrapped in acid-free paper, were the missing masterpieces. The falcon had not stolen the art, of course. Investigators theorized that the thieves, needing a perfect temporary hiding place while the investigation was at its hottest, had used a drone to stash the loot on the one spot no one would ever think to look. They never accounted for a different kind of flyer, a creature of the skies whose own homing instincts were being meticulously recorded by science. Vega's innate drive for a high, secure perch had led her to the same exact location, and her tiny tracking device had become an unwitting beacon, guiding authorities to a recovery that would have otherwise been impossible. This bizarre intersection of wildlife biology and grand larceny proves that even the most sophisticated criminal plans can be foiled by the simple, predictable behaviors of the natural world. What other lost treasures might be hidden in plain sight, waiting only for the right creature to point the way? A simple phone call from a curious home cook became the crack in a smuggler's entire operation. They had purchased a lobster from a local market, a normal enough transaction, but while preparing the meal, they noticed something odd attached to the creature's shell. It was a small, durable plastic tag stamped with a unique identification number and a phone number for a marine biology institute. Doing the responsible thing, the caller dialed the number and read off the digits. On the other end of the line, the researcher's reaction was one of pure disbelief. That lobster was not supposed to be for sale in any market. It had been caught, tagged, and released months earlier in a strictly protected marine conservation area over 100 miles away, a zone where all commercial fishing was completely banned. This single-tagged lobster was a living piece of data that had just exposed a massive breach in environmental law. The purpose of these tagging programs is vital for conservation. Scientists attach these tiny markers to track migration patterns, growth rates, and population health. Each returned tag provides a critical data point, helping to set sustainable fishing limits and protect vulnerable species from overharvesting. This particular lobster, however, provided a different kind of data point. It was direct evidence of a sophisticated poaching ring illegally raiding protected waters. The Institute immediately contacted federal wildlife agents. This was not just a case of a few rogue fishermen, it was organized wildlife trafficking. The agents launched a complex undercover operation, posing as buyers for a high-end restaurant chain. They infiltrated the supply chain, following the trail from the local fish market back to a specific docking facility. Over several weeks, they documented boats returning under cover of darkness, unloading crates of undersized and illegally sourced lobster directly into unmarked trucks. The tagged lobster was the key that gave them their first solid lead, its specific identification number allowing them to pinpoint the exact protected area where the poaching was occurring. The subsequent raids were a major victory, resulting in multiple arrests and the seizure of tons of illegal catch. A multi-million-dollar smuggling operation was dismantled because one lobster, destined for a dinner plate, was still carrying the calling card of its scientific past. This story is a powerful reminder of the unexpected connections in our world, where a conservationist tool for studying life can become a law enforcement tool for stopping crime. It makes you wonder what other evidence is moving silently through our supply chains, just one observant person away from revealing a hidden truth. A squirrel's craving for a good chew toy plunged an entire neighborhood into darkness. It was a routine call for the utility crew, a common scenario where a curious rodent had shorted out a transformer by gnawing on the wrong cable. Their job was simple: restore power as quickly as possible. But as they worked to isolate the damaged section of the grid, one of the linemen noticed a strange anomaly on his monitoring equipment. Every other home on the block was drawing a normal, baseline amount of electricity except for one. A single, unassuming house was pulling a staggering amount of power, enough to run several small factories. The reading was so far off the charts it defied any logical explanation for a suburban residence. The workers were not police, but they were trained to report such blatant signs of power theft or irregular usage. They followed procedure and contacted their supervisors, who in turn alerted the authorities. This was no longer an electrical issue, it was a major red flag. Police obtained a warrant based on the extraordinary power consumption data. The raid that followed revealed a sprawling, sophisticated indoor marijuana farm, with hundreds of plants growing under the intense glare of high-wattage lamps, their irrigation and ventilation systems all guzzling stolen electricity. The entire operation had been hidden behind closed blinds and quiet walls, completely invisible to the outside world. It was a criminal enterprise that depended on blending in, on not drawing attention to itself. The one thing its operators could not hide was the massive energy footprint required to keep their illegal garden alive. They had planned for everything except for the simple, gnawing instinct of a squirrel that led a crew of observant utility workers right to their door. It makes you wonder what other hidden operations are humming along right next door, completely concealed until the smallest creature decides to take a bite out of the wrong wire. The nose of a detection dog is a finely tuned instrument capable of isolating a single forbidden scent from a swirling sea of legal ones. At a bustling international port, a beagle named Jasper was on duty with his customs and border protection handler, his job to sniff out narcotics and agricultural products. He was a specialist trained to sit when he detected the specific odors of drugs like cocaine or heroin. One day, his routine inspection of a shipping container filled with ornate wooden furniture took an unexpected turn. Jasper began circling a large, heavy armoire, his sniffing becoming more intense and focused. He did not sit his trained final response for narcotics. Instead, he let out a series of sharp, excited barks, a clear and persistent alert that something was very wrong. His handler was perplexed. A secondary scan with a handheld narcotic sniffer found nothing. Trusting his partner completely, the handler called for the container to be moved to a secure bay for a full physical inspection. Workers carefully disassembled the armoire, and inside its hollow legs and backing panels, they found not drugs but stacks of meticulously printed currency. The bills looked perfect to the naked eye, but Jasper's nose knew better. He had been cross-trained, meaning his olfactory education included not just narcotics, but also the unique chemical signatures of the inks and papers used in official currency production. The counterfeiters had sourced materials that visually mimicked the real thing, but they could not replicate the exact proprietary chemical composition. Jasper was alerting to the faint, telltale scent of the wrong kind of paper and the off-brand industrial inks, a discrepancy invisible to even the most trained human eye. This was not a small-time operation. The sheer volume of counterfeit bills stuffed into that single shipment pointed to a sophisticated international ring. The investigation, launched from Jasper's alert, spanned multiple continents, tracking the furniture back to a clandestine printing press operating under the guise of a legitimate packaging company. The resulting raids dismantled an entire network responsible for flooding markets with millions in fake currency, a scheme that threatened economic stability. Jasper's story underscores a profound truth about these canine detectives. Their value lies not just in finding what they are told to find, but in their ability to perceive the world through a lens of scent, uncovering crimes we did not even know we should be looking for. It makes you wonder how many other deceptions are passing right under our noses, completely undetected except by the one sense we lack. An injured owl arrived at a wildlife center, its wing broken and its body weakened from days without food. The rehabilitator worked with gentle hands, soothing the frightened bird while checking for further damage. It was during this careful examination that her fingers brushed against something rough and unnatural tangled deep within the feathers of its talon. Pulling it free, she found a tiny, frayed piece of synthetic fiber, no bigger than a grain of rice, but tough and uniquely blue with a distinct zigzag pattern woven into it. She set the fragment aside, focused first on the owl's recovery, but the oddity of the material lingered in her mind. It did not look like anything from the forest. Weeks later, a news report about an unsolved museum burglary caught her attention. The thieves had apparently scaled the building's exterior to bypass security, and the only clue was a single, cleanly cut strand of specialized climbing rope left behind at the scene. A description of the rope flashed on the screen, mentioning its distinctive blue color and zigzag weave. The memory of that tiny fragment snapped into sharp focus. She immediately contacted the police, turning over the evidence she had plucked from the owl. Forensic analysts placed the fiber under a high-powered microscope, comparing it to samples from the rope found at the museum. It was a perfect match in every way, the same polymer composition, dye lot, and unique manufacturing pattern. This single piece of evidence created a tangible link between the crime scene and a specific geographic area, the owl's known hunting grounds near the museum. The owl, in its desperate struggle after being injured, had likely flown into the climbing line or snatched at a glove, capturing a piece of the criminal's own gear. This passive collection of evidence directed the investigation toward a suspect who lived on the edge of those woods, a man with a history of rock climbing. Confronted with this bizarre but irrefutable physical connection, his alibi crumbled. He had never considered that a silent witness from the night sky would carry a piece of his rope to a healer's hands. This story redefines the concept of a crime scene, expanding it from a single location to the entire territory of the wild creatures that move through it. What other microscopic truths are caught in the fur and feathers of the animals around us, simply waiting for a curious mind to notice? He returned to a silent home and a darkened aquarium, its vibrant world now still and lifeless. His beautiful tropical fish, usually a darting kaleidoscope of color, floated motionless near the surface. The initial heartbreaking assumption was a simple power failure, a tragic accident that had cut off their oxygen supply. But a nagging doubt lingered, a feeling that something was profoundly wrong with the scene. In a state of grief and suspicion, he carefully bottled a sample of the tank water and brought it, along with one of the deceased fish, to a veterinarian who specialized in aquatic life. The vet's examination revealed a horror far beyond a simple equipment malfunction. The fish showed clear internal signs of acute toxic shock, and the water analysis confirmed it, laced with a lethal concentration of a common household cleaner, a substance that would never accidentally find its way into a sealed tank. This was not an accident, it was a deliberate act of poisoning. The investigation turned immediately to the home, and the evidence pointed squarely at his partner. The motive was as cold as the water in the tank, a massive life insurance policy taken out in his name, with her as the sole beneficiary. She had added the poison to the aquarium, believing it would be dismissed as a tragic, random event, a filter malfunction or a sudden disease. She never anticipated that his attachment to his pets would compel him to seek a professional opinion, or that a veterinarian would possess the specific knowledge to distinguish between natural death and a chemical assassination. The fish were the first silent victims of a plot meant for their owner. Their sudden, collective death was the only alarm that could have been raised, a biological warning system that exposed a crime of passionless greed. This chilling case forces an uncomfortable question: how many other acts of malice are disguised as simple misfortune, waiting only for someone to look past the obvious and see the truth hidden in plain sight? Their frantic getaway hit a literal wall of buzzing fury. After a brazen daylight bank robbery, two men sped away in a stolen sedan, cash and discarded weapons filling the back seat. Police cruisers were closing in, their sirens wailing, when the driver swerved off the main road, crashing through a dilapidated wooden fence on the outskirts of town. The impact was catastrophic, but not for the reason you might think. They had plowed directly into the thick trunk of an old oak tree, and wedged within a hollow of that tree was a massive, established hive of honeybees. The collision was like striking a bomb of living, stinging shrapnel. In an instant, the air outside the car turned black and vibrating with an enraged cloud of thousands of bees. The insects, perceiving the violent impact as an attack on their entire colony, launched a coordinated, furious defense. They poured through the vehicle's broken windows and vents, a living flood of pain and noise. Inside the car, the scene descended into pure, primal terror. The men were being stung dozens of times per second, their screams muffled by the deafening hum that filled the cabin. They clawed at their own faces, swatting frantically at the crawling, stinging blanket covering their skin and clothes. The driver, blinded by pain and panic, lost all control, and the car lurched to a final stop, its engine stalled. The choice became unbearably simple: remain inside the metal box that had become a torture chamber, or face the police. They threw the doors open and stumbled out, flailing and screaming, running directly into the waiting arms of the astonished officers, who watched as nature delivered its own form of swift, stinging justice. The police, using protective gear from their trunks, were able to secure the abandoned vehicle. Inside, they found everything: the stolen money, the loaded guns, and even the black masks they had worn during the robbery, all left behind in the frantic, agonizing retreat. The bees, having defended their home, eventually calmed and returned to the remains of their hive. This was not a trained animal or a clever pet, but a force of nature itself, an unintended environmental trap that transformed a simple wooden fence into the most effective police barricade imaginable. It proves that sometimes the most formidable ally of the law is not a badge or a bullet, but the raw, untamed instinct of the wild. A lake holds its secrets in the deep, its surface giving away nothing. For years, this particular body of water was just a quiet landmark in a missing person case that had long since grown cold, a mystery that seemed destined to remain unsolved. Then a dog named Murphy arrived at the shore. He was a specialized kind of cadaver dog, trained not just for land, but for the unique and difficult task of detecting the scent of human decomposition rising up through water. His handler waded in thigh-deep, and Murphy began his work, moving methodically along a boat, his nose scanning the air just above the surface. Most of the lake drew no reaction, but when they reached a specific, unremarkable patch of water, Murphy froze. He sat, his entire body rigid with focus, his trained alert signaling that he had caught the faintest trace of a scent plume rising from the depths. It was a signal of absolute certainty in a place that looked completely empty. Divers went down at the exact coordinates of Murphy's alert, descending into the murky darkness. Their light soon illuminated what had been hidden for decades: the rusted hulk of a car, its license plate matching the vehicle owned by the missing individual. Inside was the resolution to a family's painful, decades-long wait for answers. The training for a dog like Murphy is incredibly specific. These animals learn to ignore the countless other scents in an aquatic environment, from fish and plant decay to pollution, and focus solely on the unique chemical compounds that rise to the surface from submerged remains. They are not smelling the body itself, but the scent cone it creates in the water, a skill that feels almost supernatural. For the family, the news was a devastating but necessary closure. A chapter finally ended after years of agonizing uncertainty. The cold case was officially solved. The death ruled an accident, a tragic wrong turn on a dark night that led into the water. Murphy's singular ability bridged a gap that technology and human divers could not, proving that some answers are not lost but waiting, held in suspension until the right nose comes along to find them. This specialized skill set makes these dogs irreplaceable, the only tool that can effectively scan vast, MURKY Chinese letter, and pinpoint what lies beneath with unerring accuracy. It leaves you to wonder how many other silent, watery graves are holding their secrets, just one remarkable dog away from giving a family peace. The cheerful chirps of a tiny parakeet usually fade into the background of a home, but this one had learned a surprisingly complex new sound. Its owner was initially amused when the little bird began to mimic a series of rhythmic clicks and soft scraping turns, often performing the sequence whenever his brother-in-law came to visit. He assumed it was just another odd bit of mimicry, perhaps a noise from a television show. But the amusement faded when the police arrived, investigating the theft of valuable bearer bonds from a home office safe. The owner mentioned the bird's quirky new habit to the detectives almost as an aside, a strange coincidence. One sharp-eared investigator, however, decided to listen more closely. He asked the owner to point out the brother-in-law the next time he visited. Sure enough, as the man entered the room, the parakeet immediately launched into its routine, a perfect auditory replica of a safe dial being turned to specific numbers. The sequence of clicks and pauses was precise and repeatable. The officer wrote down the numbers implied by the sounds. It was the safe's combination. The brother-in-law, confronted with this bizarre and undeniable evidence, confessed on the spot. He had stolen the bonds and, believing the home was empty, had frequently practiced opening the safe to ensure he remembered the code, never realizing the tiny, bright-eyed witness in the corner was memorizing every turn. This light-hearted story carries a profound weight, demonstrating that criminal oversight can come in the smallest of packages. It makes you consider what intricate secrets our own pets might be learning from the rhythms of our daily lives, completely unaware of the significance they hold. A massive bull moose stood like a living barricade on the narrow gravel road, its immense antlers a tangled crown of bone and defiance. Deep in the remote mountain pass, two armed robbery suspects found their frantic escape plan halted by 1,200 pounds of unmovable wildlife. They had just pulled off a tense heist at a small town bank, their vehicle loaded with cash and the adrenaline of a clean getaway. Now, as police sirens grew louder in the distance, their only path to freedom was blocked by an animal that refused to yield. The driver laid on the horn, a desperate blare that echoed through the pines, but the moose merely lowered its head and took a step closer to the car, a deep guttural sound rumbling from its chest. It was a standoff between panicked criminals and the absolute indifference of nature. They were trapped, caught between the law behind them and a force of nature ahead. With every passing second, the gap closed until the flashing red and blue lights filled their rearview mirror. The officers approached cautiously, their own surprise evident as they saw the reason for the fugitive's sudden stop. The subsequent arrest was swift and without struggle, the fight gone out of the men as they were handcuffed just feet away from their antlered captor. This bizarre intervention was a powerful reminder that the wild holds its own form of justice, creating obstacles no criminal can possibly plan for. It forces us to consider the sheer unpredictability of a world where the biggest problem a fugitive faces might not be the police, but the local wildlife asserting its right of way. The family had grown suspicious after noticing small valuables disappearing, but they had no proof and multiple people had access to their home. Desperate for answers without draining their finances, the tech-savvy father devised an ingenious plan. He set up a small, low-power nanny cam in the living room, but he faced a critical problem. The camera's battery would never last through an entire night unnoticed. His solution was both simple and brilliant. He wired the camera directly into the power source for his daughter's pet hamster's exercise wheel. The tiny generator in the wheel produced just enough current to keep the camera running, but only when the hamster was active. Every night while the family slept, the hamster's natural instinct to run powered the entire surveillance system. It was a perfect, self-sustaining cycle of energy. For weeks, the camera recorded nothing but darkness and the soft whirring of the wheel. Then, one evening, it captured a clear image of the babysitter moving through the room. She was not checking on the children. She was quietly opening drawers and slipping jewelry into her pocket. The video evidence was undeniable, a perfect time-stamped recording of the thefts. Confronted with the footage, the babysitter confessed immediately, stunned that her actions had been documented by a camera powered by the very pet she often stopped to admire. The stolen items were quickly recovered from her apartment. This charming story redefines the concept of a partner in crime fighting. It was not a trained dog or a vigilant bird that cracked this case, but the simple, routine activity of a tiny hamster on a wheel. Its nightly runs created the energy that fueled justice, proving that even the smallest and most ordinary of creatures can become an accidental hero in the most extraordinary of ways. It makes you look at every whirring hamster wheel in a new light, doesn't it, as a potential generator of truth. An elephant's memory is not just a legend, it is a living record. At a peaceful wildlife sanctuary, a gentle giant named Bonga had always been a favorite among the volunteers, her calm demeanor a testament to the safety she had found there. Yet her entire personality shifted whenever one new volunteer, a quiet man named Leo, entered her enclosure. She would not just shuffle away, she would become visibly agitated, her ears flaring wide, her trunk raised to sniff the air with clear distress, and she would position her massive body defensively between Leo and the other, younger elephants. This was not random skittishness, it was a targeted, powerful reaction that the sanctuary's head keeper knew was a form of communication. Bonga had a history, rescued from a brutal confiscation years earlier that had broken up a notorious wildlife trafficking ring. Her memory was the key. The keeper, trusting the animal's profound emotional intelligence, decided to run a background check on the volunteer, something they did not normally do for short-term helpers. The check revealed a stunning connection. The man was not who he claimed to be. His real identity was linked to an open Interpol warrant for wildlife trafficking in a country halfway across the world, an arrest stemming from that very same ring Bonga had been rescued from years prior. He had been a lower-level enforcer, one of the men responsible for the violent capture and transport of young elephants. Bonga, just a calf at the time, had never forgotten the scent, the posture, or the presence of one of her captors. Her long memory had identified a criminal that human systems had failed to locate. The sanctuary worked quietly with international authorities, providing the tip that allowed them to monitor the man's movements and communications. This cooperation led to a coordinated arrest at the airport as he attempted to leave the country, and his capture provided evidence that helped dismantle the remaining threads of the trafficking network. This final story brings our journey full circle, from a parrot remembering a single phrase to an elephant recalling a face from a distant past. It solidifies a profound truth that the animal kingdom possesses a deep, emotional intelligence and a loyalty to justice that operates on a timeline far beyond our own. These 33 stories are more than just bizarre facts. They are a testament to a different kind of law enforcement, one that walks, flies, and swims among us, always watching, always remembering. From parrots that speak crucial words to elephants that never forget a face, we have journeyed through a world where justice wears feathers, fur, and scales. These 33 stories share a single, humbling truth: the criminal mind, for all its cunning, consistently makes one fatal error. It underestimates the silent intelligence of the animal kingdom. We have seen dogs whose noses map the invisible, cats whose curiosity unearths hidden treasure, and insects whose collective death cries reveal corporate poison. Criminals plan for human witnesses, for security systems and forensic technology, but they never plan for the loyal pet, the wild guardian, or the simple creature following its own ancient instincts. This is not a collection of lucky coincidences. It is a testament to a different kind of order, one built on perception, memory, and a profound connection to the world that humans often overlook. Each case shatters the arrogant notion that we are the only intelligent actors on this planet. They remind us that instinct is a form of genius and that loyalty can be the most powerful weapon against deceit. So the next time you look into your pet's eyes or hear the call of a wild bird, remember the potential that resides there. These creatures are not just sharing our world, they are observing it, protecting it, and in their own unique ways, they are helping to keep it just. If you have a story of a clever animal who surprised you, share it in the comments below. We would love to hear it. Subscribe for more journeys into the incredible, and never, ever underestimate the quiet wisdom of the creatures who walk, fly, and swim beside us.